Hello, James here. Hope you're doing well. Well, remember I did the last video and problem. So this is going to explain another history on why some people that are black feel the way they do. And I know it's a sensitive topic, but it gives a clear understanding. But for people who are black, you're going to find this interesting.
Didn't get there without donations.
The fun to those from her husband's side. Many firmly resisted their husband's attempts at managing, disciplining, or selling their because they were also slaves in a way and had to be obedient and cheerful, while their husbands also had numerous affairs with black slaves from whom children were born. Humanly to become mistresses surrounded, which was extremely devastating for them, and they felt disgusting. They were very bored when their husbands would go on trips for one reason or another, so they had to find an occupation, and then they exploited the slaves in certain ways, which included satisfying their lustful desires. Housewives married their husbands at the age of 15 or 16, and as they grew up, they became more and more lonely and sad. Affairs between mistresses and slaves were much rarer than their husbands than female slaves. Far from intimate relationships between white mistresses and dark-skinned slaves did not occur, they certainly did, but much less was known about them. These relationships happened because women couldn't quite suppress their sexuality while their husbands were on the road. They were sad and lonely, and their burning desires had to be satisfied by someone. They, like their husbands, practiced extramarital gratification of their passions. As one of the dangers of a potential intimate relationship with black slaves was that children of mixed race would be born. At that time, contraceptive methods were not so widespread, but they did exist. Condoms were made from animal skin, oiled silk, and rubber, and along with other contraceptive methods, were used to prevent pregnancy. Intimacy of dark-skinned slave. From her testimony, it is learned that the abuse of the intimacy of dark-skinned slaves was widespread. Mistresses decided on this type of exploitation of slaves sometimes out of pure boredom, and some were very frustrated in the intimate field. So what they could not achieve in other places, they did with slaves. They were not so powerful in other fields of life, so they saw the satisfaction of low passions as compensation for personal failures in other spheres of life. Intimate relationships were also present between white mistresses and dark-skinned men who were slaves. By focusing attention on the ways that multiple and sometimes conflicting sources of oppression and power are intertwined, such an intersectional analysis allows us to make sense of how persons occupying a position of low status in one social arena can simultaneously occupy one of high status in another. Mistresses were often able to force black slaves to have relations with them, and Captain Richard Hinton also spoke about this. I have never found a bright-looking colored man whose confidence I have won who has not told me of instances where he has been compelled, either by his mistress or by white women of the same class, to have a connection with them. The aforementioned Harriet Jacobs also spoke about the way in which the mistresses exploited the intimacy of black slaves. They know that the women slaves are subject to their father's authority in all things, and in some cases, they exercise the same authority over the men slaves. I had myself seen the master of such a household whose head was bowed down in shame, for it was known in the neighborhood that his daughter had selected one of the meanest slaves on his plantation to be the father of his first grandchild. She did not make her advances to her equals, nor even to her father's more intelligent servants. She selected the most brutalized over whom her authority could be exercised with less fear of exposure. Housewives were in charge of preserving traditional Christian values and maintaining peace and stability in the household. They were highly valued because they were able to properly take care of the estate in their motherly roles, and because they were virtuous women. Intimate life of the mistresses. As for the intimate life of the mistresses themselves, it was regulated in accordance with the law and the ruling culture. Adultery was punished much more severely when it came to women than it was for unfaithful men. Housewives were also harshly condemned for having children out of wedlock because it was a great reproach for white women, which was not the case when it came to dark-skinned women. White women were attributed to highly moral behavior, especially white women from the upper classes of society, and they were characterized by purity in all fields, including their intimate life.
Ladies of Liberty.
They were supposed to be modest and restrained. Girls on the plantations, things looked very different, and there was not an iota of white women's chastity, which was widely talked about and confirmed by Jacobs. If you want to be fully convinced of the abominations of slavery, go on a southern plantation and call yourself a Negro trader. Then there will be no concealment, and you will see and hear things that will seem to you impossible among human beings with immortal souls. To justify the exploitation of the intimacy of dark-skinned slaves, the story of the chastity of white women and their supremacy in relation to black women, who were synonymous with lascivious behavior, was emphasized. Women from the upper classes gave themselves the right to satisfy their intimate desires in this way, because they considered themselves superior to black women. They also had great frustrations due to the prescribed culture and because their husbands were often absent, so they could not satisfy their lust in the right way. Then they used slaves for that purpose. They had affairs with slaves because of which they suffered great humiliation. It even happened that housewives became pregnant and then made great efforts to conceal the pregnancy. Children of mixed race. Mistresses compensated for the absence of power in their relations with their husbands in their relations with slaves. Scandals that entailed condemnation from society of public humiliation rarely happened, but sometimes they could not be avoided. So children of mixed race were born as the fruit of the love of mistresses and slaves, as testified in his autobiography by Charles Ball, who had an affair with the daughter of a rich planter. The girl was kept in her father's house until the birth of her child, which she was not permitted to nurse. It being taken from her, she was degraded from her rank in society, and her child was sold into slavery in order to avoid scandals. Infanticide occurred, or children would also become slaves. Planters' wives were supposed to be virtuous and honest girls and to direct all their love towards their husbands. They obviously took their frustrations out on the slaves because they were also a certain type of property of their husbands, who were effectively their masters. Their husbands were allowed to exploit them in the same way as they did with their slaves, and then justifiable frustrations arose.
What they call that, microism? That's what that is. That's what you get on the job today.
Their freedom was significantly limited, and when they had to travel, they always did so with a male escort. Southern Country Slave Codes. As Low Country Slave Codes demonstrate, female mastery was specifically inscribed into the colony's legislature from their earliest days. 1701 South Carolina law stated that slaves castrated for fleeing their master, mistress, or owner would be further mutilated for repeat escapes, while another from 1740 warned owners failing to provide slaves, under his or her charge, sufficient clothing, covering, or food, they would be held legally responsible. Georgia's laws threatened to fine the master, mistress, overseer of any slave who was hired without an approved ticket. Clauses detailing other civic responsibilities of slaveholders, including contributing the colony's militia and sending slaves to build public works, used similarly gender-neutral language, specifically taking into account female owners. Female slave ownership existed and was acknowledged, in fact, because so many male heads of households died prematurely amidst the instability of colonial life. Some women gained unprecedented economic autonomy through it. These women independently managed large plantations and freely bought, sold, bequeathed and hired slaves, which gave them the financial status to play important public roles within their communities. Well aware that the Southern patriarchy was generally hostile to female autonomy, such single slave-holding women protected their precarious privilege by replicating the same racist hierarchies that enabled Southern slavery, slave mastery. It was not limited to the unmarried. Wealthy women entered marriage with slaves gifted to them by parents, and though legally, wives, persons and property, enslaved or otherwise, belonged to their husbands, the reality was more nuanced. Some mistresses distinguished between their own and husband's slaves. Former slave Silas Glenn remembered his mistress being good to the slaves that come into her from her daddy, but mean to those from her husband's side.
What was your mother like? She was beautiful.
So, well, that was different. But oh, it gets interesting. And so you're probably wondering why did I play that? Because everything from the past repeats itself in the present. Remember, people say we gotta leave things in the past, but spiritually they always show up in the present. The spirit of some people who feel this way, their spirit, with the mindset, the microism that they have to be over. Some people with that mindset, they have to be over black people because that's how they see black people, and they were taught this from generation to generation. In some households. And so, could you imagine that? But that's how it's taught. So, that's why we have why black people suffer like they do today. And it's racial trauma. The past repeats itself. Oh boy. But if you think that was something, watch this.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my channel, Runaway Slave.
Watch what they did to this.
I would like to thank all of my subs and supporters who watch, share, like, and comment on the videos. In addition, I have to give a big up to all of my people who purchased my masterpiece, The N-Word is No Secret in the Service. If you would like to purchase this masterpiece, just go to the link in the pinned comment. Thanks again, everybody. Big up to you all. Let's cook. Okay, so some American history here, and we're going over to the medical field. Now, this is about the first successful heart transplant that was performed in America on record. Now, it was performed on May 25th, 1968 by surgeons in Richmond, Virginia. These were two white American doctors named Dr. Richard Lower and Dr. David Hume. These were surgeons from the Medical College of Virginia in Richmond, or MCV.
I'll be using another
1968, not that long ago at all, okay? Now, they did perform this heart transplant. They put a heart in a white man. They were successful at the surgery, but the truth tells us that they weren't really successful at all, people, although they were successful in the surgery. And the reason why they weren't successful at this surgery is because the heart that they took and put in this white man was stolen from a black man. Welcome to America. You know, welcome to America. And nothing these American people do in the white community is ever on the up and up. You know, morals, principles, and respect for humanity aren't included in most things that they do throughout history. Now, the black man that they stole his heart from, his name was Bruce Tucker. Now, Bruce Tucker, he was a factory worker in Richmond. So what happened was, Bruce Tucker was at work, he fell, hit his head, serious injury. After this injury, he was brought into the Medical College of Virginia Hospital on May 24th, 1968. Now, of course, when he came in, he's in bad shape, he's unresponsive, terrible head injury. Now, the officials at this hospital claimed that they were unable to locate any of Bruce Tucker's family. That was a lie. On Bruce Tucker's person, there was a business card in his pocket, which was the business card to his brother's business. It was right there. Did they call his brother? Of course not, okay? They did not notify his brother. They were not going to go above and beyond and try to contact anybody from Bruce Tucker's family because they had something that they wanted to do anyway, okay? So nobody called anybody. And in addition, Bruce Tucker had the smell of liquor on his breath. He had been drinking prior to him falling and hitting his head at work. And because of the fact that Bruce Tucker was drinking and he smelled like liquor, and they also lied and said that they couldn't locate any of his relatives, they profiled him as what's called a charity patient and marked him as a potential heart donor, okay? He's a heart donor now. Now, Bruce Tucker He's in very bad shape, so he's connected to a ventilator. He's unable to breathe on his own. Now, there was a junior medical examiner that performed something on Bruce called an EEG. And what an EEG is, it determines electrical activity in your brain, okay? So they performed this EEG on Bruce Tucker, and they determined that there was no brain activity. He has brain death, okay? They said that he has brain death based off the EEG. Due to this, Bruce Tucker was removed from the ventilator, and these doctors, Dr. David Hume and Dr. Richard Lower, removed his heart and put the heart in a white man, okay? Now, there was a reason why they were very motivated about taking Bruce Tucker's heart. And there was a reason why they didn't go and try to contact his family. They pulled the okie doke, being slick, and stole his heart, okay? Now, at this time in America and throughout the world, they had a lot of new medical things going on as far as surgeries and things like that. They were doing things that were a big deal, things that hadn't been done before. And around this time, there were many so-called superstar surgeons. And these superstar surgeons were trying to be the first to do everything, okay? In 1954, the first human organ transplant, which was a kidney transplant, took place in 1954. So these surgeons who did this, they were a big deal. In addition, there was a South African surgeon by the name of Dr. Christian Barnard. He performed the first heart transplant on record on December 3rd, 1967. Again, these guys, Dr. Hume and Dr. Lower, were the first people to do it in America on their record, okay? But this South African surgeon named Dr. Christian Barnard, he was the first one to do it worldwide on December 3rd, 1967 on their record. Now, what's interesting about this is this Dr. Christian Barnard, he actually studied in Virginia under Dr. Hume and Dr. Lower. So these two, they were motivated. They're like, hold up. He's getting all this attention. He's on the cover of magazines. He did that. We trained him. We definitely got to make sure we're the first to do this heart transplant surgery in America. So it's like a competitive thing with them. And you know, when these demons, man, when they have competition in mind and money and they want to be seen and get attention for certain things, they will go above and beyond. There are no boundaries. There is no respect for humanity, which proves, and this is why they did what they did anyway, okay? They stole this man's heart. They felt as though they had the perfect opportunity. They have a black man here, he's brain dead. We're going to say we couldn't contact his family. We smell alcohol on his breath. Let's just act like he's some kind of junkie. But they did not try to go ahead and contact his family, which was very deceptive. And again, people, he's black. These white surgeons in the medical field, they do not care about a black body. They had a white man to put this heart into, and they were going to do it. This is true white American history stuff right here, okay? So Bruce Tucker's family learned that his heart was missing from a funeral director. The funeral director told him this. Nobody ever told them, you know what I'm saying? And what they did was they pieced together what happened from the news. They watched the news and they hear on the news about, the first successful heart transplant. So they remember that from the news. They didn't, of course on the news they didn't say, this heart came from Bruce Tucker. So they put two and two together like, hold up. Our peoples, the funeral director told us he don't have a heart. We just seen on the news that they did this surgery. Okay. They put two and two together. So his family eventually filed a civil lawsuit for wrongful death. They went to trial in the year of 1972. They actually hired an attorney by the name of L. Douglas Wilder. L. Douglas Wilder became the first elected black governor in America as well, by the way. That's who they hired, okay? Now, according to this attorney, L. Douglas Wilder, he said that the doctor, Richard Lower, willfully, wrongfully, and intentionally pronounced Bruce O. Tucker dead ahead of his actual death. It was in violation of the law, well knowing that he was not legally qualified to do so. He said that state law required family notification and waiting 24 hours before performing a surgery, okay? He said they skirted the process that was in place in the state of Virginia because they were so eager to finally do this operation, which was true, okay? They were in competition, okay? In this case with Bruce Tucker is another example of many of medical ethics, racism in medical ethics and in the medical industry in America. Very similar to what happened to the sister Henrietta Lacks, who's also from the state of Virginia. Yes, Henrietta Lacks is from Virginia. Virginia was a real nasty place for doing this type of medical stuff, even though it was all across the country. So Henrietta Lacks, for people who don't know, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer in 1915. A doctor went, collected the cells from one of her tumors, then reproduced them in a lab, and after her death, these cells were distributed widely amongst different scientists throughout America, and they were used for all kind of things like cancer treatments and discovery of the polio vaccine. And her family knew absolutely nothing. They did not give them anything. They were just doing what they wanted to do, stealing things, okay? Now, actually, that's years ago, but people to this day, they still do this. Racism is deeply embedded in America's medical infrastructure. Very deeply embedded. They do not have respect for black bodies. The medical industry actually always used black bodies for experiments against our will without us knowing. At one point, people, they used to do their research, they would go and grave rob, okay? They would grave rob. So a medical college or school, they would go to cemeteries and steal the bodies of black people to do their research. It was illegal, but since these bodies that were being disrespected and stolen, they were black bodies, the authorities just turned a blind eye, you know what I'm saying? So this university hospital here, the College of Virginia in Richmond, right, this one we're talking about where these two white doctors work, they actually were real big into that. They actually had a black man, a janitor who worked there by the name of Chris Baker. They call him the body man, okay? Chris Baker, look at his face, look at him. I mean, he looks like he doesn't have a soul. He don't look like a good, nice guy or a nice human. You know, he looks like what they called him back then. They called these people ghouls or resurrection men, okay? That's what he was called, that's what he was. This dude worked at that same university where the doctors performed his surgery as a janitor. And he actually lived in one of the buildings in the college. He was a janitor at the college, okay? But he also was what was called a ghoul or a resurrection man or a body man. So what this dude would do is, for the school, for these white people who send him out, they would send him out to go dig up black people's graves and bring bodies back to the school. Go sell them, go steal them. Yes, he was a sellout. He was a Satanist. He was, just for being able to accept a position like that. But you know, this dude had to be a slave. I mean, only white people aren't going, if white people are going to go dig graves for the most part, they're going to get a black person to go do it for them while they sit back and watch. You know, that's like some slave work for them. And that's what he did, this guy. I mean, terrible dude. I don't care if he's black. I don't care if none of these people, I don't care about any of them. You could throw them all in the meat grinder right now. This ghoul, the black guy, and every doctor and every person who was working at this university, every white person who actually knew that these things were going on, disrespecting black bodies, having no respect for our humanity, okay? So this guy, this ghoul, as he was called, Chris Baker, again, a loser. He lived at the school. I mean, he literally was a slave. But people, they say that this grave robbing of black bodies, it went on all throughout the USA for the medical industry, but it slowed down. It's actually slowed down. But Virginia was one of them states that was still doing it well deep into the 1900s, okay? They were like late in the game with still doing this. They were still doing it, man. I mean, they would also take bodies from the Virginia State Penitentiary to use for research also, because the state penitentiary was only a few blocks from this medical university, okay? So they would go over there, get inmates, take their lives and things like that. When the guards beat them down, the guys would just disappear. If you listen to old stories from guys who are in these old penitentiaries, they'll tell you such and such just disappeared. They came and got him. This is the kind of stuff they were doing, okay? And this is how the white community did their research. Today, they just become more sophisticated, okay? Many of our people that are going out to doctors and getting procedures, maybe dialysis, all kinds of other stuff, are being used for experiments as well. We don't know it. They might not all result in death, you know what I'm saying? Some of them do, quite a few of them do. But they are going to do experiments on black bodies before white people, They try to use the animals, but they also still use black bodies. They just become, more deceptive at it, and they're able to, throw some money around a little more to get things done and hide things. But the
Okay. So I had to give you
Divesting
time.
gone wrong. Aja Naomi King and Dan King. A broke white man. Aja Naomi King is an actress who rose to fame from the movie The Birth of a Nation.
On the run. Take a look. They killed people in Iraq for no reason at all but being black. They say the killing won't stop until they get you.
I mean, that's a very powerful scene in the movie, and that camera is all on you. It's just your face. I wanted to see yourself on the big screen like that.
It's pretty insane, actually, especially in a film like this one. I'm used to watching How to Get Away with Murder, which is, like this really fun show that we do, but seeing something like this, being a part of telling a story that is so crucial to understand about our history as Black people in this country, it's just so necessary in such a very visceral way for me, and I'm just so grateful that I got to take on this part.
And take it on, you did it very well. And Armie Hammer was here yesterday, and the scene we showed with him was you on the auction block. And that was your first day of filming. That's a heavy first day.
Filming, yeah, and that was an extremely heavy day. I didn't know how that was going to be for me emotionally. I've never portrayed this kind of character. I hate saying character because she was a real person that was living and breathing on this earth, and I wanted to honor her, but that was really terrifying. To step up there and do that, it feels humiliating, and you understand immediately the kind of fear that these people live through. But I had to remember that this was her reality, and that she's stronger than I am, and I had to let that kind of just enter me and allow that to exist on the screen. People say nice things, but the thing that means the most to me is that people will see the film and that it'll educate them about a part of our history that I didn't even know, and I'm so embarrassed to say that, and I just hope that they understand that we have that kind of power inside of us, and that we can all access and tap into our greatness and walk in that.
She did not look sincere when she was talking about the movie. I wonder why. Aja has a dedicated fan base in the TV industry as well as the movie industry. Aja Naomi King is a hardworking woman who manages both her work life and personal life flawlessly along with her husband and partner Dan King. I hope you are paying attention. Aja Naomi King's husband Dan took her last name. His name was Dan J. Anywho, Aja married a broke white man because she was desperate to have mixed race children. Who is Dan J? He is an ice bath instructor and owner of Pause and Recharge. Yes, you heard. He was an ice bath instructor and now has become a stay-at-home father. So Dan J, now known as Dan King, is happy he doesn't have to work anymore. How has your life changed since becoming a father regarding lifestyle, e.g., traveling, fitness, and home life? What have you learned about yourself as Kian's father? Dan, it has been turned upside down. Everything has changed. It feels as intense as it is rewarding. I am a proud full-time father now, trying to do as much of the heavy lifting at home as possible without burning the candle on both sides. It took me a while to realize that asking for help when needed will actually allow me to give my family more. So Aja Naomi King works hard so he never has to. You know what's interesting and slick? He took her last name so his half-black son would never have his last name, meaning he will never be a part of the white man's family. His firstborn son isn't allowed to have his name. Remember when it was said that white men simply use their biracial offspring as tools? Perhaps Dan J was sick of putting people in buckets of ice for a living, so he was able to find a desperate rich black woman to take care of him. Divesting gone wrong.
Hello, this is Deborah Yao with Black Education TV, and I'm going to be discussing Daughters of Zion that are quite rude and nasty. And I'm going here because I said that I would in a recent video where I was addressing brothers who go after Becky and how they will come up with many different reasons, which are really just excuses as to why they go after Becky. But in that, I said I wanted to discuss some things dealing with the Daughters of Zion, in which I got a couple of replies from brothers that kind of really stuck out to me. Well, one was actually posted on Facebook, and the other was under the video itself. And the one under the video, the brother actually stated that he was, a well-to-do brother as far as taking care of himself, and he raised his 2 children, and he's a pretty nice guy. He has a lot going on for himself. And he went on to talk about how he owns land. And, a number of different things. He farms his land or what have you, and he's just got a number of different things going on. And how so-called black women are completely turned off by that. They don't care that he owns land, that, he's trying to farm and take care of his family, and that he's a good-looking man and just have his stuff together. He has his stuff together. But on the other hand, he says those of other nations, Gentiles, white people or people of other nations, they look at that and they're like, wow, very interested, you see. But black women don't give him the time of day. And they are not impressed by his land or anything like that. Okay? Now, the other brother, he's a friend on Facebook, and he had shared a story about how he simply tried to hold a door for a so-called black woman. And her response was, I got it. He said she was very rude and very nasty towards him. And he's like, I'm not trying to take you out on a date or get in your panties or anything. I'm just holding the door for you, woman. But the response that he gets is this rude, nasty attitude. Now, like I said, there are some daughters of Zion out here that are very rude and nasty, but they don't understand what this does for all of us, meaning all black women. Because there are enough rude, nasty black women out there to where some people will use that as an excuse not to deal with any black women. Now, you and I both know that not all black women are like that. I'm not like that, and most of the people I know are not like that either. But we can't afford to let these loose-lipped, loose-tongued, loose women represent us. We've got to represent the so-called black woman ourselves, the Israelite women. We've got to represent in such a positive light to where women like that are overshadowed, because they are out there and they are making waves, making us look bad with their loud mouths, like the scripture said, with their loud mouths, their necks stretched forth, with their clanking of the heels and all of this, with their pride. Now, what I find sad is that, like the brother said, she wasn't even all that cute, but he was trying to be a gentleman. The number of times I've heard scenarios like that is too many. My son went through something similar. My husband, before we met, went through something similar. I remember one of my husband's co-workers went through something similar with a loud, nasty, rude black woman. There's a young man on YouTube. He was explaining something that happened to him as well, very similar, where he was being polite and nice to a young woman who was working at a fast food restaurant. He was there as a customer. She was there taking his order. He said something nice to her, and she just popped off on him. And what he did, he popped off right back on her, and he went in on her. He said she wasn't attractive or anything, and he just played off on all of that. See, first, he was trying to be nice to you, but because you were so rude, now he embarrassed the heck out of you. He talked about how she looked, her facial bumps and all of this stuff. So she shined light on her own self. She sunk her own ship. Black women, you are sinking your own ship with this rude, nasty attitude. Not all of us, family. I'm talking about those who the shoe fits.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my channel, Runaway Slave 2.0. I would like to thank all of my subs and supporters who watch, share, like, and comment on the videos. In addition, I have to give a big up to all of my people who purchased my masterpiece, The N-Word is No Secret in the Service. If you would like to purchase this masterpiece, just go to the link in the pinned comment. Thanks again, everybody. Big up to you all. Let's cook. Okay. On the original original Runaway Slave channel, I covered a story about a young lady by the name of Irene Gakwa. Irene Gakwa, she's a black Kenyan immigrant. She was living in Boise, Idaho. Well, Irene just disappeared, and to this day, nobody knows where she is at. Well, her family doesn't know where she is at. Somebody knows where Irene is at or what happened to her, okay? Well, in the story, Irene Gakwa, she had a fat white American Slav boyfriend by the name of Nathan Heitman. Just a fat, just a chubsy type of loser dude. That's her boyfriend, Nathan Heitman, okay? Now, they lived in Boise, Idaho, and then they they left and relocated to a place called Gillette, Wyoming. This guy, Nathan Heitman, he's 39 years of age. Well, part of that story, he was just recently, a few months ago, he was sentenced up to 6 years in prison in order to pay $13,000 in fines and restitution after he pled guilty to stealing thousands of dollars from Irene Gakwa in the weeks after she vanished. Okay, it's been a little over a year since Irene Gakwa has vanished, and this dude, he stole money from her. That was part of the story, and now he has to go to jail for that. He has to do at least up to 6 years. He stole money from her after she disappeared. They went and checked some things out, and they realized that some money was taken from her account. How did this happen? She's not around, right? They figured out that he did it. This dude right here, he's going to serve up to 6 years in state prison. He won't even do 6 years, yo. Trust me, that's a guarantee. It's a guarantee. But the messed up part about this story is he's not going to prison for the disappearance of Irene Gakwa. I mean, he stole her money after she vanished, but he claims he doesn't know where she's at. I think that's being covered up. I mean, he doesn't know anything. That's what he says. He doesn't know anything. And the white community hasn't spoken up on this. You know, law enforcement did do their research as far as finding out who stole the money from her account. But I think they know that he did this as well. And that could just be one thing that they say, okay, we're going to put him in jail for this, but we're not going to really put him in jail for that unless they have him locked up right now pending an investigation and possibly not telling us all the clues and information that they have as far as the case with the disappearance of Irene Gakwa. I don't know. I can see it either way. I can see the white community out here in Idaho or whatever, you know, protecting this dude and just saying, okay, we're going to make sure he just get this time for this. But we're not going to, you know, really look too deep into this because she's just a, you know, a Kenyan immigrant or whatever. But a little bit more about Irene Gakwa, because I covered this in the first story. Again, she came from Kenya. She's a good daughter. She's a good aunt, sister. She moved to the United States in the year 2019. Her goal was to go to school in the United States, become a nurse, and be with her family. She has two brothers who also lived in that area in Idaho, okay? So she was working towards a nursing degree at Gillette College. And Irene was known as somebody who was always smiling. She was always laughing. And she was last seen by her father, who was still in Kenya, on a video call on February 24th of 2022. When she last seen her father, when her father last seen her on video, he said he recalls teasing her because she looked hungry and tired. She said her father also said that her smile wasn't the same when he seen her, and he noticed that her hair wasn't braided like it usually is. Her father said on this last video call that he had with Irene, she looked different, okay? And Irene and her father spoke on video call every other day. Again, her father's still in Kenya. One thing that they didn't know, that Irene's father and her mother didn't know, was that Irene moved in with this guy, Nathan Heitman, from Idaho to Wyoming. They moved to Wyoming. So she kept that from her parents, and she even kept it from her brothers who were local. She probably did because they wouldn't approve of it. Irene and this guy, Nathan, their relationship was back and forth, up and down, wasn't so great. And just looking at this dude, could you imagine what their beef was, with like the problems that they had? You know what I'm saying? Imagine what that was. So this guy, Nathan Heitman here, man, a real loser, man, a white American loser, one of those white people who are lazy, looking for a handout, a slob, a white person who has everything laid out for him perfectly to be successful in America as a white American, and yet he still can't be successful. He does absolutely nothing positive with his life. You know, he's just one of those, you could just look at him and tell I'm being prejudiced on this part right here. On this part, the other stuff I know for a fact because he's a loser. But on this part, I mean, this guy Nathan Heitman looks like one of them dudes who sits back on the deep web, looks at nasty stuff, you know, things that he shouldn't be looking at, probably on the deep web, you know. One of those guys who has like nacho cheese fingerprints on his mouse, on his keyboard and everything, and he sits online and calls people nigger all day in the comments, probably on this channel and stuff like that on YouTube or whatever. He looks like one of them type loser type bozos, you know, a real soup sandwich type of individual. Can't do nothing for himself, and no self-respecting white woman would ever want him. So, but of course, he can get with Irene Gakwa because she comes from Kenya. She's a black person from Kenya. She's in America now. This is a young lady with goals. She goes to school. You know, she has money in the bank. She has a family that cares about her. Her family and her friends said that Irene was a very independent person. Obviously, Irene does have some issues. We know that, of course, even with all these good traits and being a good student, because she's with this guy, Nathan Heitman, you know. Of course, she's dealing with some issues, definitely struggling with a sickness of the heart and a spiritual illness called European Caucasian hypnosis. She definitely has that, and it might have cost her her life, y'all, you know, unless she went off somewhere on her own. I seriously doubt that, but look at who she's with all the good things that she has going on. Remember, we constantly talked about on the channel, people who are suffering with this Caucasian European hypnosis, which is a spiritual illness as well. They can have everything lined up well. They could be smart people. They can have everything going for themselves. But as soon as you bring white people into the equation and have to make decisions, whether it be proactive or reactive, you know, ability to use logic, they lose it all. They just lose it. They could be a rocket scientist, but suffering from this thing called European hypnosis. But Irene, they say she was a very independent person, and her family and friends, well, mainly her family, they became very concerned after not hearing from her for days. Again, she spoke to her mother and father per video call every other day. They got concerned about her. In addition, her family's messaging her because they didn't get that video call, and they said that they weren't getting the usual responses that came from her phone. Her family says that her messages that were written to them were odd. Instead of a mix of Swahili and Kenyan slang that they usually use when they talk, the messages were in like English, almost as if, well, they were translated, but they were almost as if, you know, somebody was using Google Translate to send them, they said. You know, so they said it just ain't looking right. We're not getting the usual Swahili and Kenyan slang that we get from her. Her father even questioned her as to why she wasn't contacting him on their video calls through text message, and they said that somebody was responding to these messages to her parents. To me, I think it's the boyfriend Nathan Heitman or what, you know what I mean, or whatever. But the responses were excuses as to why she wasn't doing video calls. She responds and says, "Dad, I dropped my phone in the water and now the microphone doesn't work." That's what one message said. Now, people, we know that this is this guy Nathan Heitman doing this, responding, man. I mean, come on, we ain't stupid, man. Another message said, you know, "I just want you to know I love you and I miss Mom." That's what came from her when she wasn't responding, which I suspected was this guy Nathan Heitman. Her parents respond, "We miss you, we want to see you." Not just on chat, on WhatsApp, okay? They're telling her that they want to see her on video because, again, her mother and her father would talk to her on video every other day. Her father responds, "We love you always, you will be my daughter forever." This is a shame, man. The man is used to talking to his daughter every other day on video call, and now she's nowhere. I mean, he can't find her. This is a shame. Now, Irene Gakwa, like I said before, she has two brothers that live in the area in Idaho, and her two brothers share a family phone plan, okay? So they're all on the same phone plan on their phone, their cell phones or whatever. And Irene Gakwa's brothers, they looked through her phone records, and what they did was they called a close friend that she's talked to many times, okay? And when they spoke to this friend, they found out that Irene moved to Wyoming with his boyfriend, Nathan Heitman, okay? He moved her out to Wyoming. And they found out that they were living in a modest 3-bedroom house in a place called Gillette. Now, her brothers knew about this guy, Nathan Heitman, but they were under the impression that she was done with him and they had broke up, they're having these issues. You know, she's not with him anymore. No. He convinced her to move out here to Wyoming. You know, really messed up. So, being that it didn't look right from her brothers, her parents are getting these weird messages, you know, they decided to file a missing persons report on March 20th of 2022. Irene's missing. So the police start to investigate and look into some things. They start to look at this boyfriend, Nathan Heitman, and they accuse him of removing money from her checking account and maxing out her credit card and deleting her email account. Why did he do that, yo? So the police did open a case for theft, which is why he was just recently sent to prison a few months ago, because of this case for theft. You know what I mean? They also questioned him about Irene's whereabouts. He told the police officers that he last saw Irene Gakwa in late February when she came home one night. He said that she packed her clothing in 2 plastic bags and left in a dark-colored SUV. That's what he told him. Nah, Nathan Heitman, I think you packed Irene in 2 plastic bags. That's what I believe. Anyway, he told the police that he hadn't heard from her since, and he said that he also withdrew the money from her bank account so that she would be forced to contact him because she would need money. That's what he said. What a lie, yo. What a lie. Anyway, to this day, this guy, Nathan Heitman, he hasn't been charged for the disappearance of Irene Gakwa. He was recently, again, found guilty of stealing her money, which is why he's going to prison now. He's getting up to 6 years, which he'll probably do, 2 years max. And people, we all know that this guy, Nathan Heitman, did this to Irene Gakwa, man. We know that. It's still kind of early. I don't know who's in the case. I don't know if they're, while they have him locked up and he can't do anything, whether they're, taking this investigation up another level, put it in overdrive. Sometimes they do that while the person's in jail. While they're in prison for something else, they're out there baking a cake, getting all their ingredients together on them so they can just go ahead and spin them up and roast them before that sentence ends. But I don't know. I can see them possibly also, trying to cover up for him as well, saying, okay, we know this guy, Nathan Heitman. We don't know who he's related to, or what kind of club he may be in, or what kind of connections he has. They may say, okay, well, look, dude, we know you did this, man, but you got to do some time. We're going to make it look like, you're going to go to prison for these charges, but the big charges will cover you. I don't know, man. I don't know. I hope that's not the case. I think this dude deserves to be in prison. Actually, I think he should be put into a wood chipper, in my opinion. But all I can say is I hope her family gets justice, man. But listen, man, I don't, in my opinion, I don't think they're ever going to find Irene Gakwa, man. Unfortunately, I believe this guy got rid of her. I mean, look at what he did. I mean, he went to her bank account, he closed out her email. Why did he do all that? I believe that he got rid of her. I seriously do. And this is going to sound really weird to some of y'all. Irene Gakwa, she wasn't a big person. I think that he ate her, man. I think this guy either ate her or he fed her to some animals. This is what I believe. I think that he either ate her or fed her to some. I strongly believe that. I don't think he did the whole put the body in the dirt thing and whatever. I think that he completely got rid of her body out there in Wyoming somewhere or whatever. Livestock or whatever they got out there. They got wild boars and pigs, and he probably, who knows what he's into. I think that's what he did. I don't think they'll find any remains for Irene Gakwa. I mean, this is a real messed up situation. Nobody has the right to take somebody's life. But I feel bad for Irene Gakwa's family. But let me tell you something. It's a real sad thing. This Caucasian hypnosis is a real deadly thing. This European hypnosis, this sickness, this spiritual illness. And Irene Gakwa, I really feel bad for her family again, but she really fell for the American okey doke. Now, don't get me wrong. I do strongly believe that Irene Gakwa suffered from this while she was still back home in Kenya. I do. A lot of them do. A lot of women over there in Kenya, they really suffer from this thing here. You can see a lot of white men in Kenya going around taking these women off, Kenyan women off the face of the earth, giving them all kinds of STDs and everything, just beating the brakes off of them. This is a common thing, you know. Irene, she came from Kenya with this sickness, came to America, and she fell for this loser bum with nothing going for herself, you know. Nothing going for herself. But Irene, because she's not in her right mind suffering from this illness, she felt as though that this dude was okay to be with. I mean, come on. I mean, if she needed a man that bad, she probably should have just got a Kenyan man to come here, hooked up with him or whatever, gave him the status. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. Not to make, here's the thing, y'all. Here's my point to this, man. Not to make fun of or ridicule any melanated, brown, or black immigrants who come to America, because I don't like this happening to anybody. Nobody has the right to take somebody's life unjustly if they didn't give them life. But this seems to be a pattern here for many black immigrants who come to America. They have a lack of knowledge. Back in their home countries, they have this whole white man worship, God bless America syndrome, which started when they were already there. They didn't pick this up in America, people. A lot of these people were in their native countries being sick like this and just worshiping whiteness, you know. So I know that for a fact, okay? These people are over there dealing with white men who are already abusing them, but they fail to take heed. They come to America and they fall for the okie doke. They have these misled views of, you know, people in America. They automatically start thinking from being indoctrinated that these white people are just so good and pristine and great, you know. Then they tell them these things about us, you know, the black people who built the country. They tell them these negative things about us, and then that sick mindset, people like Irene Gakwa and others, many others, you know, they go and they believe this stuff. They adapt this mindset that the white man in America is just so great, and these black people are just some sick, crazed people who we should stay away from, you know. But yet we know everything that goes on, you know. We were already building this country before your great-grandparents were even born, dealing with these same sick white people who do these things to people like Irene. You know, it's just really messed up because they come here, they don't understand, and they're just sitting ducks, just a food. They just food for these white supremacists because at the end of the day, they still qualify to be a nigger. These white supremacists, they just want a black body, man. That's all they want, man. You know, they're taking advantage of these people who come here, these immigrants who are black but from other countries. They take advantage of their docile manners, them being agreeable, and having this happy to be here, I owe you whitey mentality. You know, but they gotta understand, you people, listen. If you're a black immigrant, you're from somewhere else, you in America, you come to America, listen. We've been dealing with these people before your grandparents were born. The black Americans who have been in America are the ones who built the country, who have nowhere to go, okay? Our hood is our home. We know how to deal with these people. The ones of us who have the balls to admit it. We still got a lot of coons, don't get me wrong. We still got a lot of weirdos and coons amongst us. Don't get me wrong, in bootlegs. But there are many of us who understand what's going on, and this is the advice that you got to take. You come over in the middle of the game, this is what you need to do. I feel as though you have the right to do whatever you want. I think that everybody has the right to roam the earth because the earth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The earth belongs to God. So everybody should have the right to go wherever they want. But what you have to do is you have to study the true history of America, okay? Before you come or when you get here, you know, you have to study the true history of America. You have to learn about Jim Crow, learn about the crack era, learn about redlining, learn about gator babies, learn about lynchings, learn about all the harsh medical things that they did to the native black Americans before you got there. Then you'll understand how things really work, as opposed to just being a sitting duck. You know, it's for these white people like Nathan Heitman to have you somewhere feeding you the pigs or, you know, possibly eating you. Because a lot of these things are happening to immigrants who come from places that are black. They qualify to be a nigger, so they get these people with their docile, you know, agreeable mentalities up in barns and things like that. You have to study the history, man. have to study the history.
Yeah. And so it goes back to character. Watch who is your character. And he's right. There's a lot of people that don't know, who are black immigrants that don't know what's going on, you know, and assume that just because what you see on TV, what you see on the news, and we do the same thing towards them in a way, but we just see that it's a different culture, but at the same time, on American soil, we share the same skin. And when you go to different parts of this country, you share the same skin. And you're gonna be microaggression with the same skin. You're gonna go through what we go through, and you can be nice. And it's mind-boggling because you in the country, yeah, it's red, white, and blue, patriotic too. But the underbelly is what he just said. So please, take heed to the message. That's what I would say. Because, I'm not saying that everybody's like that, but just because you meet a few couple people don't mean that everybody is like those few people who was nice to you, who look opposite of you. Because when you come over here, it's a whole different ballgame. So, and you know, and as I made this, and for the black women who choose, like black men, to go outside in America or elsewhere, make sure you pick the right mate. Don't be so willing to demonize your own. Even when you pick someone else of a different race, make sure you know the character. Don't be so fascinated with the color, but with the character of that person. I mean, like you said, you're gonna do what you're gonna do, but the reality is, when you get behind someone's closed doors, it will be revealed to you who they really are. People put on a face in public, but when they get behind closed doors, remember, because that's who they really are. When you live with them, wake up with them, eat with them, and everything, that's who you get. So keep that in mind. All right then. I hope this kind of brings some attention and wake people up. It's not to cause division. It's cause to make people think. Know the character, not the color, not the class, not as education. The character of a person, because the character of a person matters. Their personality matters. And use your God-given discernment. God gave every human being. This video is not about hatred, but we gotta learn to. Someone's gotta learn to love ourselves, for real, and stop looking to each other as the enemy, because you've been programmed from the beginning. So you gotta undeprogram yourself. That was the point of me making this video. Not to pick at, but this, you had to hear from a woman too. She finally sees it. Why some men ain't going, and why some men are going out the country for other women. Alright then. So see you on the next video. Till next time, take care.